Hey, what's going on, guys? This is White Fox here. Today I am going to be posting a video on how to turn your stock cluster into a gauged stock cluster, as you guys can see. So in order to set up your cluster, you're going to need a few things. One, you're going to need a cluster. This is my cluster out of a 96 Honda sedan Civic LX. It wasn't automatic, so that's the reason why it's got the Prindle on there. I ended up playing around, messing with this, ended up doing something where I can put an aftermarket gauge, which does work. Everything works pretty much perfectly. Calibrations are pretty much very minute to a degree where you could drive it on the street and wouldn't even know a difference. Only one wire comes off. This is your constant power wire, so you guys will be able to see this. I will try to direct you where you can wire this. I have kind of more of a race car build. My car is going to be set up a little bit differently just due to the fact that I have kill switches in my car and stuff like that. So a few things that you're going to need. You're going to want I got some heat shrink ring terminals. Real small hole, but enough to fit where you take out the speedo. You have these holes here where it actually mounts into the back. So all these little screws right here. Another thing, I don't use these too often in automotive, but it is useful to have, is these lever guards. Basically an easy way to add in a line. You only use this one for the backlights. If I grab this here, you'll see there's going to be a lever guard here just for your backlights. So when you turn on your headlights or your marker lamps or anything like that and your gauge lights kick on, you'll still have gauge background lights on your stock lights, but then this speedo will also dim down. Another thing you're going to need a drill, something preferably around 3/16 or an 1/8. Drill bit will work. You don't want to go too big with it because that's kind of going to be your little fine-tune adjuster that comes with your gauge. Another thing you're going to need is die grinder. If you don't have a die grinder, I mean, there's other ways that you can chip away at the back housing. There's only small, minuscule little pieces that you're going to have to grind away. I'll show you exactly where you got to do all of that. You're going to, of course, need wire strippers just so you can connect that lever guard and connect the ring terminals. Another one thing you're going to need is a fine tip flathead screwdriver. That is for the main adjuster. You're going to want a skinny little flathead here. That will help you get the motherboard pretty much undone off these tabs here. Phillips screwdriver, typically like a PH2, PH1. And then last but not least, a diagonal side cutter. Alright, if we start with the gauge, stock gauge, it's very simple to take apart. You have all these little pop tabs, and all you got to do is just hold. I start usually with the bottom, go to the side, work the top, and go back to the bottom, work the side, and it should pop relatively easy off. Now to the next bezel, same thing again. Got these black tabs all sitting around. My biggest advice is, first off, make sure you take this little light bulb out. That's one of your dome lights for your gauge. You want to hold this black tab ever so slightly off to the side and pull up on the white housing part. Should pop past that tab. Do the same thing to the other side. There we go. We'll set that off to the side as well. If anybody has ever modified one of these, then you know how pretty easy it is to get one of these apart. This center hole right here is perfect diameter for a 3 3/4 GlowShift speedometer gauge. No boring it out, no nothing. You don't have to do anything with it. It fits in there right perfect. Now back to the cluster. We are going to be taking out these 4 screws here. All right, with all 4 of those screws out, you should be able to slide out the bottom. Be careful, make sure you're holding on to it the whole time. And you should be left with an empty bezel. You won't have all these X's on here. So there is quite a few tabs in here that hold down, or pretty much hold on to the back plate of your speedometer. So if we look, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plastic tabs that all need to be snapped out and pretty much grounded all the way down. Since the gauge kind of hits this light bulb right here, and you're not going to really have to worry about that since it's a background light anyway, you're pretty much just going to take this light bulb out and don't use it. With your gauge, you want to take these plastic pieces out, and I always found just pretty much getting a good hold of them and snapping them out works perfectly fine. It's nice because most of them are pretty much flat. Now that those are out of the way, we do have to make a little bit of an adjustment so that way the gauge can actually fit into the cluster. Alright, so when you go to mount the GlowShift gauge, there is going to be the back housing that actually holds the gauge to the front bezel. You're going to have to grind right here, kind of where I put the black marking at. You're going to have to grind down there, and then as well as over by the tachometer, there's just going to be a little spot that you're going to have to kind of grind down. And then last but not least, you also want to kind of grind down a little bit just over here. Not too much. Very, very little. Not even really around that. Just kind of more around here. Just enough to fit your bezel. Yeah. Kind of want to grind around these 2 areas, because you're going to have this little back housing. I'll show you real quick. Kind of have this little back housing here that will kind of stick out and kind of touch. So what you're kind of doing is just making a little bit of clearance for that. And then your top one here, like I said, you don't have to go all the way through. You can just go right up to about maybe just a little under my line that I drew right there. Still have a little bit of the lip if you want. But before you do such, make sure you do take and move your motherboard away from where you're grinding at and cutting at, because if you don't, you will f up your cluster and it will not look pretty. You can go ahead and start popping these little motherboard out. Just work your way around it, kind of walk it off. Same with both the sides. Now that that's out of the way, if you want, you can do this third one. You're gonna have to have that one done anyway, because I'm gonna have a little spot here that you're gonna have to drill out for your fine-tune adjuster. Now for your side grinding, you're gonna want to make sure you move the wire and stuff away from the board there. So we're gonna pull up here. Actually, I'm just gonna pop that bulb out. Makes it a lot easier. Usually you can take a screwdriver shove it where the wire was and kind of prop it up a little bit. So you should have something looking like this, or at least something pulling, you know, on the motherboard a little bit just to pull it away from it. Just so that way you don't accidentally grind into it or cut into it a little bit. From this spot, you want to take your die grinder. I've got a right angled Milwaukee, but you can take your die grinder and you pretty much want to shave away from this part here and this part here, but you also want to do a couple more things. All right, so you do kind of want to shave down this bottom left post here. You want to allow a little bit of room for the wires to go through, because that bottom left post is going to be the odometer. Technically, the gauge has the odometer built into the speedo. It's not really an odometer, it's a trip. So you will lose the ability of having an odometer doing this. I only shaved down the one side so the wires could come off to the side and kind of lay flat behind the gauge. If you want to shave it all the way down, you're more than welcome to. It's not going to hurt nothing. As well as, you don't want to go too deep, but you want to kind of get rid of this whole spot right here. I will show you in the other gauge. Mind you, the other gauge is still my original one that I have messed with, so grindings are not going to be as absolutely perfect, but you can get the idea of where it needs to sit. Your next part here, mind you, I did some little extra stuff. You don't have to do this little grind out path, but you should have pretty much about right there what it should look like. You don't even have to even go down into this crevice here. And then over here in this corner, you can see you just grind a little bit so that way the mount sits flush the other side. But once you do that, you're going to end up with something around the lines of this. But you mainly want to kind of have this top shaven down. You want to have these sides shaven down, as well as this side a little bit. I will tell you right now, this plastic is everywhere. It gets very staticky. Do your best to kind of clean it up. I was kind of just throwing stuff together to get it all to work for you guys. You do want to still get the wire, so that way the wire can kind of lay a little bit more flat, because the gauge will sit against it. And I have already got the wires all hooked up, but I will show you how to do that. On the back side, depending on what gauges you go with, as far as I know, GlowShift is the only gauge that I've ever messed with for the Speedo. So if you find another Speedo, be wary that the back housing might not be the same as the GlowShift. So GlowShift has their green wire going into the speedometer. That would be your speedometer signal. Their yellow wire would be constant power. Black would go to negative, which technically you can run this one. I ran it over here. I was doing some testing, but you can actually run it up here. I've already messed up the mount on this one for such, but that's why I said just don't cut that one. Red is going to be your key on power. Orange is going to be your dimming for your headlights. What I did was I took the wire, pretty much ran it right across, figured out how much I needed, crimped, did all that stuff. You guys don't need to see me doing all that. I mean, kind of already done it. And I don't have another wire set to really do it right now. But this is how I did it. Like I said, you can run your ground actually over here instead of over here. I was just doing this over here because I was going to do some calibrating stuff through this hole, but it's not absolutely perfect to fit and line up. Also, for your background light here, this is where you're going to use your lever guard. You can use any side. It's not going to matter what side. They both are going to do the same thing. But you're basically going to hook up your orange wire right in line. These lever guards are really nice. Like I said, you can just have a nice little end here Put your wire right into, make sure it goes all the way down, and locks it right into place. And that pretty much will sit flush right behind the cluster. But after you're done with that, you want to drill a little hole right behind your motherboard, pretty much right next to this nipple, where your gauge fine-tune adjustment's going to be. It's actually not that far. I'd say pretty much just about a little over ½ an inch. If you're counting it from the end of this, like where the peg starts, it's pretty much about an inch. And then you want to come down, or not an inch, ½ an inch. And then you want to come down just under ½ an inch. In that little peg hole, you'll see it right here. This is kind of whereabouts you want to have it at. And that's where your fine-tune adjustment's going to go. Another thing I want to also add to on your drilling, you do kind of want to put a little drill hole right here on your back housing. For the ring terminals, I used these screws that were actually the nuts that were from the original GlowShift gauge. The nuts that were underneath the bracket, or the mounting bracket, actually fit the screws that were originally holding down the speedometer. So if you wanted to use that, by all means, go ahead and use that. That's what I did. Lastly, with this little part here, since you have a screw that comes up, you do want to take your mounting plate. Be aware of how your mounting plate mounts, but you're going to want to put like a little drill hole in your mounting plate. I advise you to take the mounting plate off and then drill it. If not, you might hit a capacitor or something underneath. Ask me how I know. This part here on the mounting, you want to drill a little hole. I would say about a ½ inch hole would be perfect. So that way you can fit the gauge in with that nut where you are actually holding your speedometer in, because you kind of need that input. So your fine-tune adjustments, I always left it at 2. If you can find a better setting and can adjust it and do better, let me know. I've played around with it. I can't find a setting that would work better, but I did find 2 works the best for me. The fine-tune adjustment, I've turned to probably about 135 degrees. So that would be a quarter turn and then a little bit further, just a quarter. So if I was starting, let's say with a notch down, you want to turn it up. So I'll show you. You're starting with it down. So if you have it tuned all the way down, let's say the arrow's down, because there's no arrow or indicator, you want to have it turned all the way up to the top left. From there, you're probably going to have to play with it just to maybe fit it to your car where you like it. Now, you should be able to sit everything down in there perfectly. If you got everything grounded down correctly and done, you should have the ability to set your cluster, your gauge bezel right down in there. And you should, if everything lines up, you should be able to have pretty much, it's almost pretty much flat as can be. As you can see on the back side, it's going to push on the motherboard just a tiny bit. That's fine, it's not going to hurt nothing. Other than that, fits in there really good. Now for your wires, when you plug it in, I usually give myself a little bit of space so that way I can work on it, pull it out and work on it. So I gave myself pretty much a couple inches, and then I used some electrical tape just to cover up the back holes of where you had the maintenance reset light and your trip reset. But once you get all that set down, you should be able to push the wires down more towards the bottom side of the cluster, and it should slide right on nice and perfect and sit nice and flush. Now we go to reassembly. take and put our cluster back together. Don't forget your overhead light. The last part, I did this so that way I can adjust it. You can drill these two little holes right here. I'd say they're about an 1/8 inch. I use a paper clip pretty much just to go right down. Biggest advice when you're drilling these holes, don't put any pressure on it. You will crack the plastic. Go nice and slow with it. Let it take a little bit of material at a time and it will eventually go through. One is going to be your light button, and then the other one is going to be, or pretty much your color and your trip. You have 2 trips. You can hold the trip button and it will reset the trip. You can do it with CRV, you can do it with Civic. I'm not sure on the Accords, but I know there's going to be probably a bunch of questions asking on if this is going to be able to be done on, you know, a lot of different gauges and stuff. I've only done it on the Civic gauge so far. I plan on messing around with the RPM gauge at some point. So yeah, I thank you guys for watching the video. I thank you guys for the support and actually wanting me to post this video and upload it for you guys. Thank you.